The boardroom was a cacophony of murmurs and clinking coffee cups, the air thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the faint whiff of anxiety. I sat at the long, polished table, my heart racing as I clutched my report, the culmination of weeks of late nights and relentless dedication. It was supposed to be my moment, the unveiling of my hard work, yet the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. I could feel my palms sweating against the cool surface of the table, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. As the meeting commenced, Mr. Johnson, my manager, stood confidently at the front, his voice smooth and authoritative. He began to present the findings from my report, a triumphant smile plastered across his face. Each word he spoke felt like a dagger to my chest, twisting deeper with every passing moment. I glanced around the room, noting the approving nods from my colleagues, their faces a blur as disbelief took hold of me. How could he, I thought, each thought punctuated by the thudding of my heart. My work was being paraded as his, and I was powerless to stop it. The laughter that erupted after his jokes about the report was like a cruel mockery of my efforts. I could feel heat rising to my cheeks, a mix of anger and humiliation flooding my senses. I wanted to scream, to stand up and demand recognition, but I remained frozen in my seat, a prisoner of my own disbelief. The sound of their laughter echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the betrayal unfolding before me. I could almost hear my own voice inside, whispering, "This can't be happening." After the meeting, I hurried to the coffee machine, desperately trying to collect my thoughts amidst the chaos of emotions swirling inside me. The steam from the machine mingled with the scent of burnt coffee, a metaphor for the bitterness I felt. I leaned against the counter, my hands trembling as I replayed the scene in my head. How could I let this happen? Was I so naive to trust someone like Mr. Johnson? The questions gnawed at me, each one more painful than the last, as I struggled to find a way forward amidst the confusion and frustration. My ambition had been crushed, but a flicker of determination began to ignite within me. I would not let this go unchallenged. I would find a way to reclaim my voice and my work, no matter the cost. The soft hum of the coffee machine filled the air as I sat across from Alex in our favorite coffee shop, the warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint scent of pastries. I stirred my cappuccino absent-mindedly, watching the bubbles pop on the surface, my mind racing with thoughts of my manager, Mr. Johnson. The tension between us felt like a taut string, ready to snap at any moment. My heart pounded, a steady reminder of the confrontation I was dreading but knew I had to face. Alex reached across the table, his hand brushing against mine, grounding me in the moment. "Emily, you can't let this go. He's taken credit for your work. You deserve to be recognized for what you've done," he urged, his voice steady but laced with concern. I could see the worry etched on his face, and it only fueled the fire of my determination. "I know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I glanced around the bustling cafe, feeling the weight of 100 judgmental eyes, imagining their whispers. What if I failed? What if confronting him only made things worse? My stomach twisted at the thought, but the idea of remaining silent was unbearable. I would not let him reduce my hard work to a mere joke. Later that evening, I paced in my living room, the walls closing in on me as I replayed every moment leading up to this impending confrontation. I could still hear the laughter echoing from the meeting room after he presented my report as his own. The betrayal stung like a fresh wound, and I felt the heat rise in my chest. I was not the type to back down easily. My ambition had always pushed me forward, but now it felt like a double-edged sword. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. I had to confront Mr. Johnson, to demand recognition for my work, but the fear of repercussions clawed at my resolve. What if this cost me my job? The thought made my palms sweaty as I clenched my fists, reminding myself that my silence would only allow his deceit to thrive. I had to stand up for myself, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The next day, as I entered the office, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a stark contrast to the warmth of the coffee shop. I felt a surge of determination as I approached Mr. Johnson's office. My heart raced, a mix of adrenaline and fear coursing through my veins. This was it. I was ready to confront him, and no matter the outcome, I would not let his arrogance define my career any longer. The sterile office environment felt suffocating as I sat through the board meeting, my heart pounding with each passing moment. The harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a cold glow over the polished conference table. I could smell the faint odor of burnt coffee from the break room, mingling with the sharp scent of fear and anxiety that hung in the air. I had prepared extensively for this meeting, meticulously assembling the data to support my report, only to watch in horror as my manager, Mr. Johnson, casually claimed it as his own. His arrogance was palpable, a heavy weight that pressed down on my chest as I struggled to comprehend the betrayal unfolding before me. When I first heard the words leave his lips, a wave of disbelief washed over me. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks as I fought to maintain my composure. My fingers gripped the edge of the table, the smooth surface feeling like ice against my skin. I wanted to shout to confront him right then and there, but the corporate decorum held me back. Instead, I sat in silence, my anger simmering just below the surface. The awkward laughter that erupted from my colleagues only served to deepen my shame, each chuckle a reminder of the injustice I was enduring. After the meeting, I found myself lingering in the break room, desperately trying to process what had just happened. The chatter around me felt distant, like a muffled soundtrack to my internal turmoil. I poured a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling my nostrils, but it did little to soothe my racing heart. I overheard snippets of conversation, my colleagues discussing the report, praising Mr. Johnson for his insightful contributions. Each word felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into my gut. How could they not see the truth? How could they celebrate a lie? "Emily, are you okay?" Sarah, my best friend, asked as she approached me with a concerned look etched on her face. I forced a smile, but it felt brittle and insincere. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just trying to process everything, you know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Her brow furrowed, and I could see the worry in her eyes. I had always been the one to shoulder my burdens alone, but now I was beginning to realize that I needed support. As I leaned against the counter, I recalled moments from my past where I had trusted people blindly, only to be let down. Memories flickered in my mind like a broken film reel, friends who had betrayed my confidence, colleagues who had undermined my efforts. Each instance felt like a piece of a puzzle that had led me to this moment, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking down a path of betrayal once more. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. The injustice of Mr. Johnson's actions ignited a fire within me, a determination to reclaim my work and expose the truth. "I won't let this slide," I murmured to myself, the resolve hardening in my chest. The coffee cup trembled slightly in my hand, a manifestation of the storm brewing inside me. As the day wore on, I felt a mix of disappointment and resolve. I had approached the meeting with hopes of recognition, only to be met with deceit. The humiliation clawed at me, but I knew I had to channel that anger into action. I couldn't allow Mr. Johnson to continue his charade without consequences. I began to envision a plan, one that would allow me to gather evidence and confront him head-on. The thought of it sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, invigorating my spirit in the face of adversity. Returning to my desk, I pulled out my notebook, the pages filled with thoughts and ideas. I began jotting down everything I could remember about the report, the late nights, the countless revisions, the moments of inspiration that felt so personal to me. Each word I wrote felt like a step towards justice, a way to reclaim my narrative from the clutches of my deceitful manager. The reality of my situation settled heavily around me. I had a choice to make: continue to endure this injustice or fight back with everything I had. I felt the weight of my decision looming over me like a dark cloud, but I knew one thing for certain: this was not the end of my story. I would seek justice, and I would make sure that my voice was heard. The fluorescent lights in the office flickered slightly, echoing the unrest brewing within me. As I sat at my desk, the cold metal of my chair felt like a shackle, binding me to the weight of uncertainty. The hum of the air conditioning seemed louder than usual, a constant reminder of the tension that loomed in the corners of the corporate space. I could smell the faint aroma of burnt coffee wafting through the air, a stark contrast to the polished professionalism expected in this environment. My mind raced with thoughts of how Mr. Johnson had managed to manipulate the situation so effortlessly. I recalled his smug expression during the last meeting when he claimed credit for the report that had taken me countless hours to perfect. The mere memory of it ignited a fire in my chest, a mix of indignation and desperation. I had to find proof, anything that would expose his deceitful tactics and restore my integrity. I glanced at my computer screen, the blinking cursor taunting me as I did my best to formulate a plan. My fingers trembled slightly as I lifted a mug of coffee to my lips, the warmth providing a momentary comfort against the cold reality of my situation. I envisioned the stack of papers I had worked on, each page a testament to my dedication, now overshadowed by Mr. Johnson's arrogance. Memories of late nights spent perfecting that report flooded my mind, the satisfaction I felt when I finally submitted it, only to have that joy snatched away by betrayal. Determined, I pushed back my chair and made my way to Mr. Johnson's office. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could hear the soft click of heels against the tiled floor, each step echoing the resolve that built within me. I found myself rehearsing the confrontation in my mind, the words flowing like a script, but as I reached his door, doubt crept in. What if he dismissed my concerns? What if he used his power to silence me? I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the uncertainty. The door swung open, and I was met with Mr. Johnson's disinterested gaze, the glimmer of triumph still evident in his eyes. "Emily, what can I do for you?" he asked, feigning innocence. His tone dripped with condescension, sending a ripple of frustration coursing through me. "I need to talk about the report you presented last week," I began, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "I noticed several discrepancies that need addressing. It was my work, and I deserve recognition for it." The words flowed more easily than I expected, emboldened by the urgency of my quest for justice. His laughter echoed off the walls, sharp and dismissive. "Oh, Emily, you know how these things work. Credit is often a matter of perception. It's about who presents the work, not who does it. You should understand that by now." Those words struck like a whip, and I could feel a flush of heat rising to my cheeks. I was about to respond, to defend my hard work, when he waved a hand dismissively. "Listen, you're talented, but this is the corporate world. It's cutthroat. You need to adapt or get left behind." The finality in his tone made my insides churn. I stood there, my mind racing, grappling with the reality of his manipulation. How could I expose him? I needed evidence, something concrete that would show the board the truth behind his facade. As I left his office, a sense of urgency propelled me forward. I had to dig deeper to gather the proof that would bring his deceit to light, and I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. Confidence surged through me as I thought of Sarah, my best friend, who would stand by me no matter the consequences. I had to act quickly, before Mr. Johnson could further tarnish my reputation or dismiss my concerns entirely. I returned to my desk. The familiar weight of my laptop felt like a compass guiding me through the murky waters of corporate deception. I opened a new document, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I began to outline a plan to gather the evidence I needed. It was time to turn the tables and reclaim my narrative, to ensure that justice would prevail and that this betrayal would not go unpunished. With each keystroke, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. I would not be silenced, nor would I allow Mr. Johnson's manipulation to dictate my fate. This was only the beginning of a battle I was determined to win. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm yet unforgiving glow through the office windows as I sat at my desk, a jumble of papers strewn before me. The faint hum of the air conditioning failed to mask the mounting tension within my chest, a reminder of the stakes at hand. I had thought that perhaps a peaceful resolution was possible, a way to bridge the chasm between my manager and me. But as I stared at the blank screen of my laptop, I couldn't shake the feeling that my optimism was just a flimsy veil over the reality of his arrogance. Deciding to take a proactive step, I grabbed my phone and texted Sarah, my best friend and confidant. "Can we meet? I think I need to talk about what's been happening with Mr. Johnson. I want to find a way to resolve this peacefully." Her quick reply was filled with concern, yet I could sense her support. We agreed to meet at our usual coffee shop, a cozy nook that smelled of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environment of the office. As I arrived at the coffee shop, the familiar jingle of the doorbell greeted me, the atmosphere bustling with chatter and laughter. I took a deep breath, letting the aroma of roasted beans wash over me, hoping it would ground me for the conversation ahead. Sarah was already seated at our favorite booth, her eyes bright with curiosity. "What's going on, Em? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, her tone light but laced with genuine concern. I slid into the booth, my fingers nervously tracing the rim of my coffee cup. "It's Mr. Johnson. I want to approach him, talk it out, see if we can settle this without escalating things further." "I really believe that we can work together on this," I explained, but even as I spoke, doubt crept in. Would he be open to a conversation, or would he dismiss me outright? Sarah leaned back, her brows furrowing in thought. "I get where you're coming from, but you know how he is. He thrives on power and control. You might just be feeding into his arrogance," she cautioned, her voice steady yet empathetic. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle heavily on my shoulders. The thought of confronting him filled me with dread, but the idea of letting this situation fester felt even worse. As the day wore on, I found myself preparing for the confrontation in my mind. I envisioned how I would approach him, the tone I would use, the points I would make. I practiced in front of the mirror, trying to muster the confidence to stand my ground against his dismissive demeanor. The next morning, I walked into the office with a sense of determination, yet my heart raced as I approached Mr. Johnson's office. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with anticipation. I knocked gently, and when I heard his gruff voice invite me in, I steeled myself for the conversation ahead. As I stepped inside, I could see him hunched over his desk, the flickering fluorescent lights creating harsh shadows on his face. "Emily, what do you need?" he asked without looking up, his tone curt and dismissive. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my purpose. I wanted to discuss the report and the feedback from the board meeting. I think we need to clear the air and find a way to work together on this, I began, my voice steady yet soft. His eyes finally met mine, and I could see the flicker of annoyance pass across his features. I don't have time for this right now. If you have concerns, you can put them in an email, he retorted, waving me off. The dismissal hit me like a cold wave, and I felt my heart sink. I understand, but I believe it's important for us to talk directly about the direction we're heading in. I want to ensure we're on the same page for the sake of the team, I pressed, trying to maintain my composure. His gaze hardened, and I could sense the tension crackling between us. You really need to understand your place, Emily. I make the decisions here, he snapped, his voice rising slightly. I felt my resolve waver, the weight of his arrogance pressing down upon me. My attempts at peace felt futile, like trying to mend a broken glass with mere words. As I left his office, a sense of defeat washed over me. The conversation hadn't gone as I had hoped, and the realization that he wouldn't budge filled me with sadness. I had tried to reach out, to find common ground, but instead, I felt more isolated than ever. I returned to my desk, the weight of the world on my shoulders, knowing I would have to regroup and prepare for the next steps in my fight for justice. The boardroom felt charged with an electric tension, the polished wood of the long table reflecting the stark glare of fluorescent lights overhead. I sat there, heart pounding, fingers twitching against the smooth surface as the reality of my situation settled heavily on my shoulders. My mind raced back to the moment Mr. Johnson had smugly accepted accolades for my hard work, his voice dripping with condescension as he dismissed my contributions. I had been so close to losing everything, my reputation, my career, my very sense of self. Emily, do you have anything to add? Mr. Johnson's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. I could see the board members shifting in their seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. My throat tightened as I recalled the laughter that had echoed around the room after he had stolen my thunder. For them, the situation was a mere spectacle, but for me, it was personal. I had spent countless nights perfecting that report, pouring my heart and soul into every detail, only to watch someone else take the credit. As I cleared my throat, a surge of adrenaline coursed through me, igniting a fire I had buried deep. Actually, I do have something to say, I began, my voice steadying as I leaned forward, daring to meet Mr. Johnson's gaze. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. I appreciate the praise, but I must clarify that the report presented today was not solely Mr. Johnson's work. It was my research, my analysis, and my dedication that brought it to fruition, I declared, each word dripping with conviction. A murmur rippled through the room, and I could see Mr. Johnson's expression shift from smug confidence to a flicker of surprise. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, my heart racing as I prepared to expose the truth. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the turning point where I would reclaim my narrative. My gaze swept over the board members, searching for any signs of support or disbelief, but in that moment I felt a surge of courage that pushed me forward. I will not be reduced to a punchline in someone else's story. This ends with me. The tension in the air thickened, the reality of my confrontation unfolding like a well-rehearsed script. I could see the disbelief in Mr. Johnson's eyes, a mixture of anger and surprise reflected back at me. I had finally chosen to stand up, to fight for my work and my dignity. Whatever consequences awaited, I was ready to face them head-on. My resolve solidified. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was ready to reclaim my place in this corporate battleground, and I would not back down. Sitting at my kitchen table, the soft glow from the single overhead light illuminated my scattered notes and half-empty coffee cup. The pungent aroma of dark roast lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of burnt toast that had been my breakfast. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages, each one a jumble of ideas and strategies that I hoped would lead me to reclaim my stolen recognition. I could still hear the mocking laughter of my manager echoing in my mind, a painful reminder of the betrayal that had ignited this fire within me. I took a deep breath, steadying my trembling hands against the cool surface of the table. A sense of anticipation sparked in my chest as I envisioned the confrontation ahead. I needed to gather evidence that would expose Mr. Johnson for the fraud he was. The memory of finding those signed errors on his desk flickered through my mind, a triumphant moment that had fueled my determination. How could he have thought he could get away with stealing my hard work? Emily, are you sure about this? Sarah's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back into the present. She sat across from me, her expression a mix of concern and unwavering support. I could see her fingers nervously tapping on the table, mirroring the anxiety I felt. I have to do this, Sarah. If I don't stand up for myself, who will? I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. She nodded, leaning in closer, her eyes glistening with determination. Okay, but we need a solid plan. If we're going to confront him, we need to be prepared for every possible outcome. I glanced around the room, the walls adorned with memories of happier times, and felt a surge of resolve. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions any longer. I began jotting down key points for our meeting with the board, my findings, the discrepancies in the report, and the timeline of events leading up to the betrayal. As I wrote, a sense of confidence washed over me. I was no longer just a victim, I was a woman determined to fight for her rightful place. We'll present the evidence, and I will not back down, no matter what he says. This ends with me reclaiming what is rightfully mine, I declared, my voice steady. The weight of the moment settled over us, and I could see Sarah's resolve mirror my own. Together, we would prepare for the showdown that would change everything. The atmosphere in the boardroom was electric, a charged silence hanging heavily as I stood at the front, my heart pounding against my ribs. The long table, once a space of collaboration, now felt like a battleground, and I was ready to fight for my truth. I could almost taste the tension in the air, a mix of anticipation and dread, as I glanced at the faces of my colleagues, some skeptical, others curious, all waiting for the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. As I took a deep breath, I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, refining my presentation, ensuring every detail was perfect. My fingers grazed the smooth surface of the remote in my hand, a tangible reminder of the power I was about to wield. I knew that the stakes were high. If I faltered now, the consequences would ripple through my career. Thank you all for being here today, I began, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I want to address some serious discrepancies regarding the recent report and its authorship. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in, watching as some of my colleagues shifted in their seats, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. With a click of the remote, the first slide illuminated the screen behind me, a copy of the report with highlighted sections indicating my contributions. I could hear the faint rustle of papers as they leaned forward, their eyes narrowing in concentration. This work, which was presented as Mr. Johnson's, is in fact the result of my efforts over the past 3 months. I've documented every step of the process, and I'm prepared to show you the emails and drafts that substantiate my claims. A murmur rippled through the room, and I could see Mr. Johnson's jaw tighten, his arrogance faltering for the first time. I pressed on, emboldened by the growing support in the room. I never intended for this to become a confrontation, but I can no longer allow my contributions to be overshadowed by deceit. My silence was never consent, and I refused to be reduced to a mere footnote in this company's history. As I clicked through slides, the evidence unfolded like a well-crafted narrative, each piece reinforcing my narrative. The faces around the table shifted from skepticism to acknowledgement, and I could see the tide turning in my favor. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, fueled by a mix of anger and determination, as I revealed the signed errors that had been overlooked, the discrepancies that had been masked by my manager's bravado. When I finally concluded my presentation, the silence that followed felt deafening. I glanced at Mr. Johnson, whose expression had shifted from smug confidence to barely concealed fury. This ends with me, and I will not allow my work to be discarded any longer. I expect an acknowledgement of my contributions and a discussion about the next steps moving forward. The board's murmurs began to swell, a cacophony of voices that echoed my own internal resolve. I had laid bare the truth, and in that moment I felt a surge of satisfaction wash over me. The atmosphere shifted, the tension gradually giving way to a sense of solidarity. I had fought for my recognition, and as I stood there, I realized that I had also fought for the integrity of my team. The battle was far from over, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my narrative, and I was ready to see it through to the end. As I settled into the quiet of my home after the tumultuous board meeting, the weight of what had transpired began to lift, replaced by a tentative sense of relief. The air was thick with the lingering scent of the coffee I had brewed earlier, a comforting reminder of the effort I had put into reclaiming my narrative. I could still feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, a stark contrast to the serenity of my surroundings. My heart, once racing with anxiety, now beat steadily, each thump echoing the resolve I had finally found within myself. I glanced around the room, taking in the familiar surroundings that had witnessed my struggles and triumphs. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated the space, casting gentle shadows that danced along the walls. I remembered the faces of my colleagues as I had presented my plan, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. I had managed to break through the barriers I had erected, and for the first time in a long while I felt a flicker of hope blossom within me. The confrontation with my manager had been a turning point, a moment where I had stood my ground, refusing to be a mere pawn in the corporate game. I recalled how the board had reacted, their eyes wide with surprise as I detailed the steps I would take to rectify my previous mistakes. The tension that had hung in the air like a storm cloud had begun to dissipate, replaced by an atmosphere of collaboration. I had seen heads nodding in agreement, and it felt like a breath of fresh air after being submerged in a sea of doubt. As I sank into the plush cushions of the sofa, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The echoes of my past decisions still lingered, but I knew I had taken responsibility for my actions. I had confronted the betrayal head-on, not only from my manager but also from within myself. The realization that I had the power to change the course of my career empowered me, and I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The phone buzzed beside me, snapping me from my reverie. It was a message from Lisa, a simple yet profound "let's meet tomorrow." I smiled, my heart swelling with gratitude. I had taken the first steps toward healing, and now it was time to rebuild those bridges. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to embrace it. No longer would I let fear dictate my choices. I would forge ahead with confidence, knowing that I was not just a leader but also a part of a team united by a common goal. This was my chance to redefine my path, and I was determined to seize it with both hands. As I prepared for bed, I felt a sense of calm enveloping me. The road to redemption was not an easy one, but I knew I was on the right track. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I was ready to face them, armed with the lessons I had learned. My journey was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to embrace the future with open arms, ready to evolve and grow, not just as an employee but as a person. This was my new beginning, and I intended to make it count. As I sat at my desk, the afternoon sun filtered through the window, casting a warm glow over the remnants of my chaotic journey. The once sterile environment of my office now felt imbued with a sense of hope and renewal. I glanced around, taking in the familiar sight of my surroundings, the neatly stacked reports, the vibrant plant on the windowsill, and the framed photographs that captured moments of joy with my colleagues. Each object seemed to tell a story of resilience, echoing the lessons learned during the tumultuous events that had unfolded. The emotional weight that had clung to me like a shadow began to lift, replaced by a newfound clarity. I reflected on the confrontation with my manager, the struggle to regain my team's trust, and the long road to redemption that lay ahead. It was a journey fraught with challenges, but I had emerged stronger, more aware of the importance of empathy and collaboration in leadership. I could almost hear David's encouraging words, reminding me that true leadership is not just about